I think our panel is going to be discussing an extremely important topic, and that is the massacre that took place Sunday, week and a half ago. It shocked the world. Many people in the United States recognize this issue for the first time, but it's really part of a long, ongoing story that started before the Arab Spring and is continuing and intensifying afterwards. It is emblematic of many of the issues that need foreign policy focus: humanitarian, financial, diplomatic, and strategic. So please join me in welcoming our panelists.
At the same time, one of the most important issues related to the government, and again, many of the issues that we're talking about are related to Coptic-owned property, but it's not exclusive. But in fact, there have been regular incidences of violence, of what we could best describe as mobs, riots of local Muslims and communities against Coptic properties and persons. Now, this isn't something that happens on a daily basis, but has happened from time to time. We have, if we go back over the last several years, and of course in the further past, we see these things going on occasion in Egypt. But of course, these things have been occurring with an alarming degree of frequency over the course of the last several years, and especially over the course of the last several months. Very often, these riots are incited by a local Salafi preacher, or simply one who is otherwise intolerant, not necessarily representing a particular Salafi group.
Those expectations that were shared in Washington definitely were shared by the Egyptian Copts themselves. Many of the community were initially skeptical about the revolution, perhaps naturally as a minority. Probably there is more a generational gap there between older generations that feared an instability that would take place, and the younger generations who were looking for a change in the country due to their definitely situation as a minority, but also due to their other economic and social demands and problems of the country that they shared with their Muslim counterparts. Those high expectations began to collapse as we were moving with the months following the revolution. We see that the situation that Kurt has described is not improving. On the contrary, it's becoming worse. The patterns that we see before the revolution are being repeated, and are being repeated in a much faster pace.
And just emphasize from the outset that the violence against the mostly Coptic protesters needs to be pinned first and foremost on Egypt's military leaders. Now, whether or not the military directed the APCs to run over the mostly Coptic demonstrators, and I actually think Sam's theory is very plausible. I think it's very possible that they just simply lost control. The buck stops with the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, and moreover, the use of the state media to inflame passions against Copts and their subsequent attempt to deny culpability suggests a concerted effort to inflame sectarian tensions and justify an autocratic crackdown. And finally, it's important to look at the broader political context within Egypt, in which the SCAF has managed Egypt's transition very poorly. Domestic security has deteriorated, the transitional period has been continually extended, and there are rampant doubts regarding the direction of the country and whether the military is simply incompetent in meeting its own benchmarks, or whether it intends to retain some kind of power, or both. And the kinds of protests that we saw at Maspero, I think, emerge from that political uncertainty in part. And when we think about U.S. policy in Egypt, the mounting failures of Egypt's military leaders and their declining credibility is a very, very serious problem, because the military remains America's closest relationship in Cairo.